Hola a todos y a todas.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor to participate in this new edition of a Aapresid Congress, especially as a moderator of this keynote speech by Dr. Ratan Lal. He will talk about the importance of soil for the future of humanity. For those of you who still don't know, he is a professor of soil science and he leads the Center of Carbon Management and Sequestration in the Ohio University. It is a complex of universities that promote sustainability, competitiveness of the agricultural system in the United States and its projection to the rest of the world. Dr. Lal has received many prizes and awards for his scientific contribution to humanity. So it's risky to try to summarize them, but I want to emphasize the 2020 award by which he is acknowledged for the benefits he provided to thousands of farmers in the world and Latin America. He follows the philosophy of Norman Borlaug, saying that science makes no sense if it does not serve humanity. He talked about the concept of one health, but he considers that soil health is a basic component that goes together with plant health, animals, human being health. Before giving the floor to him, I would like to mention the award he was received. Um, He's the the goodwill prize by the IICCA. He is concerned with soil degradation, with the impacts um, countries in this continent, especially Middle America. Everything related to food security, to fight against poverty. Dr. Lal, you can take the floor.
I would like to thank Maria Florencia Akame and her team for coordination of the Hall of Corteva and the talk that I'm recording this morning for the Aapresid 2020 Virtual Congress on 24th of August. As suggested by Maria's team, the title of my presentation, The Importance of Soil in the Future of Humanity. I'd like to begin by stating the origin of agriculture, which as the temperature changed around 10,000 BC and they became stabilized. That was after the Ice Age. And at that point, because the temperature was favorable, agriculture began during this period called the long summer. Many places around 8,000 BC, there was a domestication of crops, which essentially led to urbanization because of the security of food production. So this particular period, also called in other cultures such as Vedic culture as Kali Yuga, is also called the Anthropocene. Paul Crutzen and others from Germany call it the Anthropocene. And many people think the Anthropocene probably began with the Industrial Revolution in 1750. In fact, I believe, and many others do, that Anthropocene began with beginning of agriculture. What is Anthropocene? It's a proposed geological epoch dating from the commencement of significant human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems, including but not limited to anthropogenic climate change. In other words, an official unit of geologic time used to describe the most recent period in Earth's history when human activity started to have a significant impact on the planet's climate and ecosystem. In this regard, agriculture obviously is a very important event that led to increase in human population dramatically. The agriculture began in many places about 9 to 14,000 years before present in Near Eastern Fertile Crescent, the domestication of einkorn, emmer, barley, pea, vetch, lentil. In northern China, about 9,000 years before present, domestication of rice. Papua New Guinea, 6 to 9,000 years before present, domestication of sugarcane and root crops, cassava, yam. Central Mexico, Aztec and Mayans, 7 to 8,000 years before present, domestication of maize, squash, gourds, and beans. In Indus Valley, 7.5 to 11,000 years before now, domestication of wheat, barley, and jojoba. West Africa, 4,500 years before present, domestication of yam and cassava. Horn of Africa, 5 to 7,000 years before present, domestication of teff, coffee, cucumber tree, yerba nut. East North America, Cherokees, 4 to 5,000 years before present, domestication of cranberries, chenpod, marsh elder, maple sugar, tobacco, squash, sunflower, knotweed, little barley, maygrass, and of course Western North America, the so-called Pueblo dwellers, about 6,000 before present, amaranth and pine nuts. And in South America, the Incas, about 7,000 years before present, the cultivation of potato, beans, and cocoa. It is this revolution that increased food availability and enhanced human population. Human population, which was about 1 billion, 1800, 1.7 billion, 1900. It was 6.1 billion in 2000. At present, it's 7.8 billion, destined to be 9.8 billion by 2050, and more than 11 billion by 2100. This population, over the last 10,000 years since the agriculture began, the number of humans has increased about 1,000-fold, from 2 to 20 million at the beginning of agriculture to 7.8 billion at present. And this population has a strong impact on the planet Earth. That impact is given by the formula PAT, P population, A the affluence, T the technology. The affluence is going up, but hopefully technology can tell us how to minimize the environmental impact of human on the planet Earth. As the population was increasing, in century 1, the population was 188 million. At present, 7.8 billion. Cropland area, 130 million. At the moment, 1,400 million hectare. Pasture land, 110 million hectare. Right now, 3.4 billion hectare. Irrigated land area, about 8 million hectare in 1800 to 350 million hectare at present. There has been also land use change and consequently emission of carbon from deforestation and land use conversion. Prehistoric, from beginning of agriculture to 1750, estimated land use change emitted 320 gigaton of carbon. From 1750 to 2018, the land use change emitted 235 gigaton. Total carbon emission from fossil fuel from 1750 to 2018, estimated about 440 gigaton. So from the land use, a total of about 675 gigaton between 1750 and 2018 plus fossil fuel emission, 675 gigaton total. 75% of that from fossil fuel, 25% from land use change. And these emissions have and will continue to have very strong impact on the ecosystems from which we, the human, derive food, feed, fiber, fuel, and shelter. The Green Revolution of the 1960s brought about a major jump in food production. The global population between 1961 and 2020 increased by 2.5 times, from 3.1 billion to 7.8 billion. This global cereal production increased 3.3 times, slightly more than the population increase, from 880 million ton in 61 to almost 3 billion ton in 2020. Per capita grain production increased 32% to present 376 kilogram per person per year. This dramatic increase in agriculture happened because we had 9.2 times increase in nitrogen fertilizer use. We had 5 times increase in phosphorus fertilizer use. Almost 5 times increase in potassium fertilizer used. Drastic increase in pesticide use. It will be infinite if I take 0 as a baseline in 1961 to whatever the large number is at the moment. And irrigation increased by 2.4 times. And this change in fertilizer and pesticides and irrigation brought up improvement in yield to 3 billion tons of grain production in 2020. But we had a very strong ecological price to pay for it. 3.5 billion hectares of land is degraded. That is 24% of the total territory, 1/5 of the ice-free land. That includes soil erosion, 1.1 billion hectare, wind erosion, 0.6 billion hectare, salinization, 0.9 billion hectare, soil organic carbon loss on some old lands in Africa and Asia, 25 to 75% of the regional stock, sediment transport in world rivers, 36 gigaton per annum, and increasing. Soil degradation is also serious in Latin America and the Caribbean countries. 20% of soils are prone to erosion, especially in Central America. 17% of Colombia, 28% of Ecuador, 62% of Chile, and Brazil's northeast are subject to desertification. Salinization is a serious problem, including in southern part of Argentina, Bahia Blanca area. Erosion is causing the problem of endangered soils, extinct soils, peak soils. It's not only the animals and tree species which are endangered, soil are also endangered and extinct because of degradation. We are having peak soil. Suitable land for agriculture, 0.25 hectare per person. That is what is needed. But in many countries, it's 0.05 hectare per person, and which is causing civil unrest, the problem of land grab. You understand what land grab is. And when soils are severely degraded, it's also called soil refuges. Soil refuges impacting the stability. Politics of Europe has changed. And the politics of North America is also changing because of the soil refuges knocking at the door of the southern border of the United States. Is there a peak soil? Yes. Are there endangered soils? Yes. Are degraded soil causing soil refuges? Yes. Is this a problem of political instability in the world? Absolutely yes. What are the causes of soil degradation? The physical process is driven by economic, social, and political forces. Why? Because when people are hungry, poor, and desperate, they pass on their sufferings to the land. That is when the land reciprocates. And when land is degraded, people's well-being is also degraded, because people are mirror image of the land. Land degradation, people desperate. More desperate, more degradation. This is a vicious cycle. And the vulnerability to degradation depends on how, rather than what is grown, how we grow it. Soil degradation will be exacerbated by the projected climate change, especially increasing the risks of erosion, which will be 36% more in sub-Saharan Africa, 14% more in the world. And soil degradation is also caused when human greed takes over and implements the policies of cutting corners for quick economic returns. We try to make reward quickly rather than long-term sustainability, the land degradation happens. Urbanization is another problem. Globally, 1800, 2% population urbanized, 14% by 1900, 30% by 1950, 50% by 2008, 61% by 2030, 66% by 2050, and 84% by 2100. From 2% to 84% in 3 centuries. In Latin America, the mega cities globally and Latin America are major problem. The mega cities globally, city of 10 million people, are only 3 in 75. 10 in 1990, 16 in 2000, 28 in 2014, 31 in 2016, will be 37 in 2025, 41 in 2030, 15 in 2050, 17 in 2075, and 83 mega cities of more than 10 million people in 2100. And these mega cities have a tremendous impact on the environment. LAC region has many mega cities. In fact, LAC region has already, in 2020, 83% of the population, 539 million people in Latin America and the Caribbean live in urban centers. And 90%, 685 million, will live in urban centers in Latin America and the Caribbean by 2050, with a strong impact on the environment. Why strong impact? Because it takes 40,000 hectares to provide accommodation and infrastructure to 1 million people. LAC is the most urbanized region of the world. A city of 10 million requires 6,000 tons of food. Therefore, in Latin America, we must think how to grow 20 to 25% of the food consumed in mega cities like Sao Paulo, Rio, Mexico, and others within the city center itself by recycling water and nutrients. Mexico, its population in 1950 was 3.4 million. In 2020, the population is 22 million, gone up by a factor of 11. Rio, the population has gone up by a factor of 4.4. Sao Paulo by 9.6. Santiago by 5. Buenos Aires by 3. Lima by 10. Bogota by 18. These mega cities are a major impact on the environment, and we must do something to minimize their footprint. Brick making in urban cities is a major issue, really not in Latin America as much as in Asia and elsewhere. So agriculture globally, 40% of the Earth's terrestrial surface is used for agriculture. 77% of agricultural land is allocated to raising animals. 70% of global freshwater withdrawal is used for irrigation. 30 to 35% of global greenhouse gas emissions are contributed by agriculture, and yet 1 in 9% globally is food insecure, and 2 to 3 in 7, almost 2 billion people, are malnourished. Therefore, there's a need for a paradigm shift in agriculture. To answer the question, what would I suggest to make agriculture a solution to environmental issues? And agriculture must be a solution. It has to be a solution. Each one of us loves to eat food 3 times a day. So how can agriculture be a problem? If it's a problem, it's our responsibility to make it a solution. Agriculture must be integral to anything. So my logical response would be to objectively and critically consider how do we produce, transport, process, and consume food and dispose of the waste. A prudent strategy would imply making soil, water, and agriculture an integral part of the solution and empowering farmers and land managers to produce more and more from less and less by reducing waste, enhancing the eco-efficiency, restoring degraded soils, efforesting the renewable lands, and saving soil and water for nature. For nature. I like Pope Francis' encyclical where he talks about nature protection in his home country. Very important message. I encourage each one of you to read it. Therefore, the 21st century Green Revolution must be soil-based, not necessarily variety fertilizer and irrigation-based, soil-based, soil resilience-based, ecosystem-based, eco-efficiency, and knowledge-based, science and management-driven. That is the way the futuristic agriculture system must be pedagogically restorative, agronomically productive, environmentally regenerative, economically viable, socially congenial, clinically healthy, laboriously appealing. And that is what soil quality and functionality must achieve. And that is where the multifunctional sustainability of biodiverse and restorative and holistic nature should be. We must restore rather than deplete soil, water, and other natural resources. Sustainable soil management means replacing what is removed, respond wisely to what is changed, and predict what may happen from anthropogenic. Sky farming, urban farming, where we have skyscraper, glass building, controlled environment, controlled light, recycling water and nutrients coming into the cities. Growing crops in a totally transparent building, capturing passive energy into that building, recovering energy from inedible plants, parts of crops to create zero energy building, returning land to perform ecosystem functions and services, reducing the ecological footprint, making agriculture weather-proof. And therefore, future of agriculture in human hand is very bright. We are living in an exciting era, especially for agriculture and system of food production. More changes will happen now between now and 2050 than during the past 10 to 12 millennia since the onset of agriculture. With automation and full integration with the industrial sector, the global farmer population will decrease to less than 1% of the 9.6 billion by 2050 or 11 billion by 2100. The high-tech three-dimensional vertical farm can efficiently produce clean organic food within the urban centers. And wherever we do conventional agriculture, we must create a positive soil and ecosystem carbon budget. So the carbon input into the soil by biochar, compost, cover crop, root biomass, crop is always more than the losses of carbon by erosion, leaching, and decomposition. Unfortunately, in many places around the world, including in the Caribbean and Central America, part of the Andean regions, the input is much less than the losses. So we are suffering from degradation of carbon stock. The best agricultural practices should be where agronomists and soil scientists work in cooperation with plant breeders and develop plants which can communicate with the managers through emission of molecular-based signal under particular stress. When plants are driven by drought, heat wave, they emit one signal. They have a pathogens and pests attacking their roots. They have another molecular-based signal. And there's the nutrient deficiency, there's another molecular-based signal. So we can detect these signals remotely and intervene targetedly. We had a green revolution where the stature of plant was short and the root system was short also. The harvest index was in favor of grains. We need to make adjustment. We need deep root system. We need more crop residues. We need more suberin content. We need residue which is less resistant, which is more resistant to decomposition. So it's not easily decomposed. We need roots which are mycorrhiza and rhizobium. We must implement no-till farming, mulch or crop residue. We must grow a cover crop in the off-season. We must always integrate crops with trees and livestock. We must try to recycle. We must use biological nitrogen fixation by rhizobium. We must improve phosphorus uptake by mycorrhiza. We must create disease-suppressive soil by high biodiversity. We must have integrated nutrient management. We must use judicious application of water and nutrients if needed and when needed by drip sub-irrigation of the root system so that these nutrients and water are absorbed mostly by plants and not leak out into the environment. We must have carbon-based fertilization system, no-till, residue management, cover crop, especially of legume, including the daikon radish and brassica and other, which have a deep root system, pigeon pea, Kazanus kazan. And when we manage nutrients, C, carbon, input must come before NPK. We must forget about NPK, must think about C first, and then supplement, if needed, NPK. Cover crop is very important. We must have judicious input of cover crops. If we did this, well, the population will go up to 9.8 billion by 2050. Per capita food consumption of the calorie will go up to 3,000 or 3,100 by 2050. Cereal production will have to go up, but the land area for cereal production globally, which is 700 million hectares now, must come down by improving the productivity of the existing land to no more than 500 million hectares. When people will say that we need more 200 million hectares by deforestation of the Amazon and Central Africa and Southeast Asia, the answer is no. We must increase productivity of existing land and save land back for nature. Fertilizer use, which use 200 million tons now, must decrease to 100 million tons or less by 2100. The cereal average yield, which is now about 3,000 tons, can go up to, with proper management, which I was describing, carbon-based management, 7 tons per hectare. This is the way to reduce them, not increase them. By using the best soil, by the best method, and saving the marginal land back for nature. Give it back to nature, land, water, vegetation, so that the nature interaction with the humanity leading to pandemics such as COVID-19 can be stopped and minimized. By doing so, we have a potential to sequester carbon in soil at the rate of potential 2.5 gigaton of carbon per year. We can store carbon soil between now and 2100 as much as 180 gigaton. And in the vegetation by afforestation, of degraded and marginal land by another 150 to 160 gigaton, with a total drawdown potential of 150 to 160 parts per million of CO2 between now and 2100. And in that goal, Latin America can play a very, very important role. The total sink capacity of Latin America for soil alone is 8.5 gigaton of carbon, with an annual carbon offset very high that Dr. Yuka saw from Brazil, and I published an article in 2017. Soil management is critical to achieving sustainable development goals. Right now, sustainable development goals similar to Millennium Development Goals and the Rio meeting of 1992 are not on the track, but they should be if we do soil as a primary factor to make sure we end hunger. Goal number 2, soil management is critical. Climate action, I just talked about. Soil management is absolutely critical. Land degradation neutrality for life on land. And there are many other goals. And poverty. How can you end poverty if agriculture is ignored, if soil health is ignored? Human health and soil health are very closely related. When soil health is improved, human health is also improved. Clean water and sanitation. When water is filtered through the soil, it's clean and purified. Similarly, the renewable energy. Sustainable development goals can only be achieved if soils are managed properly. I was told how human can affect nature. Let's look at how humans have done agriculture worldwide, and let's say North America. I take the example of North America. 1750 to 1850, everywhere were hand tools. The crop yield was about 1 ton per hectare. The world population was about less than 1 billion, or a little more than 1 billion. Between 1850 to 1950, we had animal power. We had rotation. The crop yield went up to about 4 tons per hectare. The human population was just about 3 billion people. Between 50 and 75, we had a green revolution. We had machine power. We had germplasm improvement. We had fertilizer. The productivity went up to 8 tons per hectare, population to 4 billion people. Between 1750 and 2000, productivity went up to 9 or 10 tons per hectare, population of 6 billion. We have improved variety, we had biotechnology, we had no-till farming, integrated nutrient management, integrated pest management. Carbon sequestration movement began during this era. Between now and 2015, we had conservation agriculture, we had micro irrigation, we had perennial culture, we had complex rotation, we had GMOs. And between 2015 and 2025, eco-intensification, rhizospheric processes, disease suppressive soil, soil-less agriculture, aquaculture, aeroculture, aeroponics, soil-less culture, save soil for other uses. The nexus thinking, interconnectivity, phytobiome management, precision farming, soil and land restoration. And from 2025 to 2050, again, recarbonization of the biosphere. Nutrition sensitive agriculture. Food must be nutritively sensitive. It's not a question of how much food, it's a question of how much nutritive food. Nutritional value of the food is critical. Eco-intensification, restorative agriculture, soil-less agriculture, phytobiome management, sky farming, urban agriculture, space farming. We are going to be moving to Mars and Moon. Therefore, soil and agronomy must be talking about space agriculture as well. We must have a slogan of producing more from less. Save land, water for nature. Humans only one species out of 8.7 million. We are too greedy. We must save land back to nature. We must do that. Why we must do it? because the world peace and stability and harmony depends on it. Depleting soil organic carbon pool, degrading soils, recurring drought, marginal use efficiencies of fertilizers and other inputs, low crop yields, perpetual poverty and hunger, high infant mortality due to hunger and malnutrition are big threats to global peace and security. Bigger than ICBM, bigger than nuclear weapon. But nobody talks about it. We must be talking how to make sure that the health of soil is improved, because the health of soil, plants, animal, people, and ecosystems is one and indivisible. When the health of soil is degraded, health of everything else is degraded with it. And this is where the future of humanity lies, restoring soil health. This is where the responsibility of the conferences such as yours lies, on talking about how to restore soil health, how to save soil, land, water, biodiversity for nature, return it back to nature by saving. And this is the philosophy. And that's the discussion that I hope you will do. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I very much hope that you have a very good meeting, and I would like to come and visit with you sometime in the near future. In the meantime, take care of your nature, take care of your soil, take care of the land, take care of the vegetation and biodiversity, and have a great conference. Goodbye.
Muchas gracias, doctor Ratan Lal, por su excelente.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ratan Lal, for your excellent presentation, for your message of producing more with less, and your insistence for building a new paradigm for the future years regarding sustainable agriculture. Your presentation has brought up many expectations. I have this first question. In the increase of soil degradation associated to green revolution, which was the most important driver or the factor, the use of input technology or laboring or tillage? Creo que
was one of the factors which was important to soil erosion. If I may so indicate, there is nothing wrong with the technology per se. It is the misuse of the technology. It's excessive plowing, excessive flood-based irrigation, indiscriminate use of pesticides, excessive use of fertilizer, excessive monoculture without cover cropping. So it was the misuse of technology which created problem, not the technology per se. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, doctor Lal. Segunda pregunta.
The second question, do you believe that if the soil is kept green all the time, could it be conserved with its own properties, or even could it be improved?
Yes, if we can keep the ground covered all the time, using cover crop, using crop residue mulch, using complex rotations, certainly soils can be improved. There is a technique called green bed technique. If we can have a leguminous cover crop, I have seen this in Costa Rica at the Earth University campus. I've seen it in at Cali Columbia campus. It's called Arachis prostrata, low-growing legume, same family as that of peanuts, and it is very low. It cannot climb on the plants. You can open a small furrow and grow crop through it. A system like this of live mulch in combination with tree can certainly improve soil health and quality, improve it better than what we have now.
Durante su
During your presentation, Dr. Lal, you said that for 2100 we will have 83 mega cities. What is your opinion if this concentration of this population is reverted? And what about developing policies to decentralize? Are there any policies in place, or at least is there any country working on these policies?
Yes, we do know that mega cities are increasing, and urbanization, the continent which is the most urbanized is the Western Hemisphere, and especially Latin America is highly urbanized. By 2050, almost 90% of the population will be in mega cities. So there are two questions. One is how to manage food in mega cities. A lot of food is coming into cities. Most of the nutrients coming in the city, especially phosphorus, um, can be a liability if not properly utilized. And yet, if those nutrients are recycled through improved urban agriculture, I gave the example of glass cities where, under controlled conditions, green vegetables can be grown. Uh, I have read the reports that even some cereals can be grown in the large glass oriented city. So, urban agriculture must be given a priority. In addition to the glass cities, aquaculture, aeroculture, hydroponics, we should also be thinking how to use some old areas which are abandoned land within the cities to grow agriculture in those areas. One thing we should be careful about urban land is the contamination by heavy metals, especially mercury, lead, uh, arsenic, many heavy metals. So we want to make sure that the soil tests are conducted to uh, purify the soil, to bioremediate, grow some plants which can absorb heavy metals, and then those plants can be disposed of to decontaminate the soil. The question of the policies, whether we should try to uh, encourage people to go back to the rural area, is certainly one option. And the other option, I'm hoping that from 2100, population is going to go up, especially in Africa, which is right now 1 billion now. By 2100, another 80 years, population of Africa will be more than 4 billion, 4.2 billion. I think with subsequently, we hope that education and human well-being would encourage the downward trend in population. Overall, I think the Earth planet will be safer if our population after 2100 were gradually to come down, as is the case now in Europe, as is the case in Japan, and some other developed countries where population after a certain stage comes down. I hope that by 2200, maybe 2300, the population will not be 11 billion. Hopefully, it will be less. And if that happens, the future of the planet Earth is better. So, two options: A, we should encourage urban agriculture; B, perhaps there should be a policy, education, award to people, incentive to go back to the urban lands. I do not know where this is being encouraged, but should be. And thirdly, we hope with education, both of men, but especially of the women, our population within the next century or 2 century will come down, hopefully, eventually to 4 or 5 billion by 2300 or later. And that's the future. And we should encourage that, not by coercion, but by education and by improving human well being. When people are given their facilities, necessities are provided, the tendency is to have lower population. and hope that will happen.
Una nueva pregunta. ¿Qué desafíos?
Another question. What challenges and opportunities are the growers facing and the farmers and the producers facing in the post-pandemic scenario as far as food production is concerned?
COVID-19 has been a tragedy. It's a tragedy which many people believe, and I'm not expert in that subject, is because of the too much interaction of human with wildlife in one way or the other, where the virus has transferred from wildlife to human. And we are faced with very serious problem globally, both in terms of loss of life as well as economic disaster. And agriculture has been affected. Agriculture effect on supply chain, both production supply chain as well as the distribution supply chain, because of the disruption in transport of labor and food products and processing techniques. I believe, and I have written an article on this, at least two of them. One was published in Food Security Journal, and it is again focused on urban agriculture, home gardens, and also even if you live in a flat, maybe have small boxes in which things such as tomato, cucumber, celery, lettuce, and other things can be grown. I think the focus should be during the pandemic crisis to strengthen local food production systems, such as urban farming, such as home gardens, such as community gardens. Already in many countries in the Caribbean, Cuba is a very good example. Urban agriculture is an important part. I do have personally my favorite hobby, the only hobby is gardening. I do have a garden, and since summer, uh, we have not actually purchased any fresh vegetables. We also share it with our family and friends. And I think this philosophy of being self reliant and increasing resistance, resilience of the food production at a local scale by recycling the bio wastes in urban ecosystems is a good philosophy. Also, fresh produce produced locally is a very good idea for health. At the same time, when children and adults are working in the soil, a healthy soil, it has also immunity. It gives immunity to people, especially children. So I think uh, pandemic has taught us a lesson. Perhaps the focus on urban agriculture and local system of food production should be given a high priority.
La próxima pregunta.
Next question, Dr. Lal. Do you agree that we have to make capital to produce using the carbon footprint concept?
Yes, that's a very good question. Green revolution technology, when it came, it was a miracle. I'm glad it happened. In the 60s, I grew up in India. At that time, India was very dependent on food import, especially from the United States under PL 480 wheat import. Right now, as a result of the Green Revolution, India is the second largest producer of wheat and rice globally. India is also exporter of number one exporter of rice. So there have been very good things about the Green Revolution. The negative part is the misuse of technology, a very large carbon footprint. For example, plowing. 1 hectare of plowing requires 30 liter of diesel in terms of carbon emission. Nitrogen fertilizer, which we are using very excessively, 1 kilogram of nitrogen is approximately equal to 2 kilogram of carbon emission into the atmosphere. Herbicides and pesticides are very carbon intensive. Herbicides and pesticides require 6 to 7, 8 kilogram of carbon per kilogram of active ingredient of pesticides and herbicides. Irrigation, lifting from deep groundwater for pumping irrigation water, is a very carbon intensive exercise. Therefore, our focus should be on reducing the carbon footprint of our production systems, which is very high now. And it is high because the use efficiency of the input is very poor. Nitrogen, its use efficiency in the United States, maybe 40%. In South Asia, maybe 20 to 25%. In East Asia, maybe 30%. So rather than increasing the rate of nitrogen, we should decrease the rate but increase the efficiency of nitrogen. Similarly, flood irrigation is a common practice, including in the Western United States. Flood irrigation is a wasteful use of water. We should be thinking about drip sub-irrigation. We should be thinking about micro-irrigation. Maybe we should be thinking about vapor irrigation, where water vapors are condensed directly on the plant roots. Maybe thinking about fertigation, where the fertilizer and irrigation are combined together. We should be having improved varieties with a deeper root system so that the nutrients and water can be absorbed from the deeper soil. We should be thinking about formulation of the fertilizer, which are slow release and their efficiency is greater. We should be thinking about no-till agriculture, eliminating all the mechanical method of seedbed pressure. So the future agriculture must be low carbon, low environmental footprint. We must think about the productivity, not in terms of the total grain produced, but productivity in terms of the kilogram of grain per unit damage to the environment. That should be our goal. That should be our mission.
Another question. Do you think it is viable to engage in ongoing agriculture with cover crops and integration of animals into systems, which is commonplace here in Argentina?
Yes, I believe that cover crops right now is not being utilized very much in many parts, including the United States. Traditionally, before the fertilizer came cheaper in 1960s and beyond. Until then, most of the farming did involve cover crops, forages, and forages which are controlled grazing, proper grazing of forages and livestock mixed together. I think if we go back to the idea of cover cropping, where you can grow nitrogen, we can recycle nutrients, especially if cover crop is a legume, and also have a mix of cover cropping with trees, agroforestry, and the livestock. Again, judicious managed grazing, controlled grazing. That can certainly be environment friendly. We know about that it is a very useful option. I think the focus we always have is the highest maximum production. I think our focus should be optimum production. Maximizing production may have environmental disadvantages. Perhaps reducing the productivity by 5 to 10% may not be a bad option. And I think it's should be considered in view of the fact that I mentioned we are producing 3 billion tons of cereals right now, 3 billion tons globally. But 1 billion tons out of 3 billion tons are wasted, either in the processing or storage or in grocery store or even at home. The total food waste globally is 30%. In some countries, maybe 40%. So we should reduce the losses, but optimize productivity. We must think that 1 ton of food saved is better than 1 ton of food produced, because of food production requires, again, emission of greenhouse gases, use of resources. So saving the food, I think we should make a philosophy of no wastage of food more than 5%. Yes, some food waste is unavoidable, but 30%, 40% is not acceptable.
Doctor Lal,
Dr. Lal, next question. Oftentimes, to produce more with less, we resort to transgenic elements, and society and environmentalists question this. So what shall we do to face this dilemma?
I personally think nature has been breeding plants through the evolution by adopting some kind of gene transfer from one plant to another. So gene intermixing, hybrid, nature has followed that process. So it's not unnatural. I do not particularly like the genetic plants which have toxins. BT gene, for example. BT gene is certainly toxin. But let's think for a while. If I'm growing eggplant or tomatoes or cucumbers, and to safeguard against pest, if I have to spray on pesticides 2 to 3, 4 times during the season, so that the food which is produced has pesticides on it, heavy metal, copper-based, or mercury-based, or other compounds, poisonous compounds which can be contaminating the food. And if I were to have that choice versus a choice of a BT gene, which has a small amount of natural pesticides, that is certainly a very good choice. But at the same time, we can think about pesticides which are of organic region. For example, neem. Neem has natural pathogenic antibiotical problems. There are many other pesticides which are of nature origin. One other part which I'd like to mention, the dilemma that you mentioned, how do you reconcile thinking about GMO and the use of pesticide? Please remember the difference between a poison and a remedy is the dose. The same dose, when it is used indiscriminately and excessively and inappropriately, becomes a poison. When it is used properly, it's a medicine. 1 aspirin is good for curing health. 100 aspirin is a poison. So judicious, discriminate use, proper use through education as a supplemental to natural system is the best strategy. It's not a very strong belief, thou shalt never use it. We must use it judiciously, prudently, scientifically, and properly, whatever we have to do. If we have to do that to feed 11.2 billion people by the end of this century.
Doctor Lal, debemos ir.
Dr. Lal, we have to round up this plenary session. Thank you very much, especially for your generosity in conveying and sharing your knowledge with us, because of your humbleness and your indefatigable work to make the earth an inhabitable, better place with living soils. I leave you the possibility to share with us some closing remarks, and thanks again. Anything else you want?
No, thank you so much. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. I look forward to continuing work with ICA and with many other organizations in Latin America. Thank you. Goodbye.